Well, good evening, everybody. Praise the Lord and God bless you. Welcome to another episode of Miller Time. I am your host, Bishop Cedric Miller, and I am so glad to be with you this evening. I see so many of you have already logged on. So good to see all of you. Mom Hazel, how are you? Been meaning to call you since Sunday. Hope you're doing better than the last report that I received. I'm so glad to hear from, excuse me, to see all of you, or at least to be seen by you. Thank you for joining me. We have a lengthy program tonight, and I am always grateful for the opportunity to share my heart with you. If you're joining us for the first time, this is not a church service. Yes, most of us on here go to the same church or have gone to the same church at some point in time or another. There are other people on here that have moved away from town and have belonged to other churches, but they'll always be members of Living Word. It's kind of like a permanent relationship. So we're grateful for all of you, but it's not a church service. This is just an opinion program where one local pastor gets to share his heart concerning the events of the day, and we get to talk about things in a safe space in light of all the partisanship and the bickering and the calcification of ideas that now exist in our time. So praise the Lord. Hey, Nancy, how are you? And to all of you, so thank you. It's not a church service, but we're Christians, and we don't want to be a part of anything that the Lord is not invited to. So would you join me in prayer tonight as we ask God's blessing? Hey, Felice, Terry, how are you guys? Let's we ask God's blessing upon our time together. Jesus, you are great and greatly to be praised. We love you, God, because you first loved us. I pray tonight that you would give us wisdom and direction. Anoint us in all we do. Father, it's not a church service, but we are always your children and we represent you always. And we decree tonight that tonight would be no different. Anoint us now. Give us your heart. Father, we bless you and we give you praise. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Praise the Lord. All right. All right. I hear you, Nancy. All right. A lot of stuff going on, and I can't deal with everything, but some things came to mind. Elder Diane, as you know, she's taking care of her husband. He's in rehab, and yet still she has to prepare all the information for me just the same. Hey, Elder Diane, thank you so much. We are two people among others in church. I know Pastor John's that way, and others. There are many others, but sickness and issues and stuff doesn't stop anything. We still have to keep working, and we still have to go on. So, hey, I'm just pointing that out tonight. We're so grateful for Elder Diane doing all that she does, especially at a time like this. Let's just jump into the news. I want to talk about a few things. I don't know if some of you saw this. I was checking on the major networks to see if I could find it, and I couldn't find it. In the nation of Florida, it doesn't happen much in America, but in the nation of Florida, and mostly in the southern states, there is a network news called Black Information Network. I don't know if you listen to it. I haven't been able to find it here, but whenever I'm there, I always catch it. And I haven't caught it here, but what I normally do is I kind of log on and see what's going on. So I caught a piece of news that I didn't hear it on any of the major networks, but it showed up on Black Information Network. And it was quite disturbing. Here it is. A West Virginia couple, Donald Ray Lance, 63, and Jeannie K. Whitefeather, 62, were arrested after a wellness check on their children found 2 of their 5 adopted children locked in a shed on their Sissonville, West Virginia property. Authorities said the shed only had a small porta potty and no running water. A 16-year-old told authorities that she had been locked in the building for roughly 12 hours and was last given food at around 6 a.m. I don't know what time it was. Clearly, to name the time means it was sometime later. The 14-year-old boy was found with open sores on his feet. Both children were dirty and smelled. according to authorities. The teenagers also stated that they were forced to sleep on the concrete floor without a mattress or padding in court. Whitefeather claimed that the shed was a teenage clubhouse and that the children weren't locked inside. However, neighbors also reported that the children were forced to perform farm labor and were not permitted inside the main residence. Kanawha County Circuit Judge Mary Claire Akers said she's never seen an indictment like it in her career. It alleges human trafficking, human rights violation, the use of forced labor. Now, I skipped a little piece of the story. And of course, the judge, once she got the full report, raised the original bond from $200,000 to $500,000. So this couple had 5 adopted children, and 2 of them were found in this outside shed with no running water, a porta potty, sores, smell, hungry, not eaten, and neighbors are saying that the kids were used for forced labor, then locked in the building for roughly 12 hours a day. The couple has 5 children, and this only happened to 2. The other 3 were in the house. I want to give you one little guess as to what was the difference between these 2 that were in the shed and the other 3 children. The indictment says that these 2 children were held as slaves on this property, possibly for years. I give you one guess. The other 3 children were fine. They were in the house, well-fed, bathed, clean. Ding, 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 ding. Now, there are a whole kind of things wrong with this story, right? Please don't write me about typecasting everybody. I have a better reputation than that. Am I the only one that think that, particularly as it relates to Black children, that maybe that there should be a thorough search, right? Maybe there should be a more thorough search of not just, the police records, but maybe the neighbors. America has become so increasingly racist, and maybe not even increasingly racist, but so increasingly overtly racist, that maybe law enforcement, before they put Black kids in a white home, and I'm going to say this, and this is so racist, and it could be. I feel like it could be, but I'm going to say it anyway. And if it's racist, you just tell me and I'll apologize. I'm not sure. But I think before they put Black kids in a white home, especially in West Virginia or Mississippi or Louisiana or Texas or Georgia, maybe just a little bit of suspicion, just that there should be just a little extra something. When it's a great idea. Alabama. How could I forget the great state of Alabama? Who just said it? Who said it? Felicia. Felice. Okay. Yeah. Maybe we should be raised by our own. Something as atrocious as this. My next question is, why didn't this make the news? Why wasn't this big news? Why did I have to go dig through Black Information Network to find things like this? You know, the South is always talking about our heritage and our history and so forth and so on. Well, you know, your history says, your heritage dictates that before we send a Black child into your house, that we should dig a little deeper. You know, this Dixie heritage that you're so proud of, and you're so, you know, I struggle with all of this. I said it before, my wife and I, we're big HGTV people because we're always trying to redo something or repaint something. And one of the things we always realize, every time there's an old farmhouse that's been in the family for generations, just wait till the pictures show. And the network always try to blur the background, but because there's always these Southern belles in their flowing dresses and so forth and so on. And just keep looking, normally blurred in the background are people who look like me that wasn't there for the dinner on the ground. But they were there working. And they weren't the hired caterers. Not a therapist. Mental health is not my field. But how do these kids get through this? How long has it been going on? And I know somebody's going to write me to say, well, you know, this is just an isolated incident. I know white families that have adopted Black kids and they were treated well and treated fairly. And you don't even have to cite those examples. I know for a fact that that is true. Right? Absolutely true. In fact, I'm going to go a step further. I know of white families that adopted Black kids, and those kids turned out with a more promising future because of the opportunities that they had in those families. They turned out with a more promising future than they probably would have had they stayed in their current neighborhood. I get all of that. But again, we're talking about these children, and we're talking about in West Virginia. Right? West Virginia is one of those states. When I think of West Virginia, I think of like, West Virginia to me is like, you know, darn near an American Auschwitz. I mean, it's hurt my heart. And it hurt my heart just not because it happened, but if a Kardashian gets Botox, that would be considered more newsworthy than the trauma that these kids have gone through. God help us. I'm sticking with that theme for a minute. My buddy Elon Musk is in the news again. Elon Musk came out this week and amplified and put an exclamation mark around a tweet with a false claim about Black homicide rates. Musk shared a characteristic response to a post claiming that there was a significant increase in the number of Black people killing white people in America in the decade since 1950. Of course, the Twitterverse lost it and said Elon responded to this tweet with all the resources available at his disposal, didn't even read the source, check the source, or anything of the nature. He just saw typical red meat, as Elon Musk and all the other Trump ilks so tend to do when it comes to anything that has anything to do with Black folk. Saw it and immediately just pounced on it. I was never so happy to get rid of a car than I was when I got rid of my Tesla from the first comment. Here are the facts. Figures show that most homicides are intra-racial, committed by offenders of the same race as the victims. In 2022, FBI data showed that 87% of white folk and Black folk were killed by people of their own race. Now, of course, you all will hear about Black on Black crime, but just hear it from me tonight. Black on Black crime, or Black on Black homicide, is at the same levels of white on white homicide. People are naturally most often killed by people based on their proximity, which increases the potential of altercation, which leads to the same result every single time. One of the richest men in the world, with all the resources known to man, could have just snapped his finger and 3 people would have done elementary cursory research, but none of that matters because he can say what he wants, and the people who love him and love that mindset, and even some of you Black folk who love the Trumpian spirit and you're listening to me right now, some of you do, and you just made an excuse. You just made an excuse for it to be okay. I was telling it to somebody the other day, and then I was talking about how a lot of people have, given up Tesla because of it. And the individual said to me, well, it's a Black person, by the way. It doesn't matter because that's not where he makes most of his money anyway. As if me giving up my car has anything to do with, now Elon won't be able to eat out as much. No. This is not about him. This is about me. It's about me. This is about, I refuse to support anything that doesn't support me. It's really that simple, right? Reverend Sue says, mass shooters, how many are Black? You know what's funny? I might have mentioned this before. Jamaica was in some international magazine a month ago, right on the heels, right? Get this. Jamaica was in a magazine right on the heels of when the U.S. State Department put Jamaica on a list of places to avoid because of the increase in crime and so forth and so on. And it says, this is how the warning read. I read it. It says, American citizens should be careful when traveling to Jamaica. Do not veer off the resort on your own, especially at night. Do not run around by yourself in expensive jewelry or clothing. And it goes in and basically saying, please avoid Jamaica. It was on the list of a few other places. Just for the record, for those of you visiting Asbury Park tonight, the same rules apply. Do not veer off on your own, especially at night. And please do not run around by yourself at night in expensive jewelry or expensive clothes. And I said that in response to Reverend Sue's comment. Somebody in the Parliament of Jamaica responded, and it says, "Dear America, Jamaica calling here. We have yet to have our first school shooting. So please tell me where is more dangerous." These are some crazy times, beloved. These are some crazy times. I mentioned this last week, but I didn't spend a lot of time on it. The Supreme Court, the whole bump stock situation. We haven't had any mass shootings either. Our concerts are fine. In fact, Kirk Franklin was recently in Jamaica. He went to Reggae Sunsplash. We talked about that. The answer is absolutely none. We don't have those, right? Yes, Kirk Franklin was recently in Jamaica. He went to Reggae Sunsplash, and everything went off without a hitch. Worst case scenario, you go to Reggae Sunsplash. Chances are the worst thing is going to happen to you. You're probably going to be high when you leave, and probably won't know why, because you don't smoke or anything, but it won't matter. You will be high. And Kirk was at Reggae Sunsplash because he went to do a gospel concert and got booed because Jamaica didn't accept his brand of gospel as gospel. So back to the bump stop. The court said, overruled, you're going too far. The 6-3 majority opinion written by Justice Clarence Thomas found that the Justice Department was wrong to declare that bump stocks transferred semi-automatic rifles into illegal machine guns because, he wrote, each trigger depression in rapid succession still only releases one bullet. So because it's not one of those situations where you just hold it and it just fires indiscriminately, but it's not like a regular gun like I may have. Dude fired, I forgot the number, when he killed 60 people at the Las Vegas, I had it. Yes, just so you understand, the gunman fired more than 1,000 rounds into the crowd in 11 minutes. All right, so, but because it's still one depression for one bullet, Clarence Thomas says, absolutely not. Leave it alone. People should be able to have guns to kill as many people as they want. But we believe in the sanctity of life. $60 dead adults we can live with. Dead babies is a bridge too far. Please don't write me and saying Pastor Miller is saying he's okay with it. I'm not saying that either. I'm just pointing out the obvious hypocrisy, and for you, some of you numbskulls, to realize that this has nothing to do with the sanctity of life. Something else is twisting in America that I've been watching, and I've been making a point about it, and I've mentioned it on this program many times before, and people are looking at me cross-eyed as if somehow I'm saying something wrong, but I'm going to say it again. And yes, I am going to get some pushback on this, and I'm prepared for that, and I'll live with it. America has this proclivity, white America in particular, where if you are white adjacent, it doesn't take long being in America before your status is elevated above your African American neighbors. And before long, you will buy into the perceived new status, and we will hear and see the same sentiments and actions coming out of you as we are accustomed to from racist white folk. Let me see if I can say that a clearer way. If you come to America and you white-ish, even yellow, beige, opaque, as long as, hey Khalil, as long as you're not, I'm not saying black, as long as you're not African American, right? Because my experience with racist white folk, especially many of those who name the name of Jesus, is that they're willing to put any and everybody up on the wrong ahead of African Americans. And one of the ways we're seeing that is that we're starting to see so much racism come out of the Latino community. It's like it doesn't take them being here long before they have drank the poison that says I am better than African Americans because they are treated as such. And in time, they will rise to positions of authority and positions of power, like the Ted Cruzes of the world, the Marco Rubios of the world, children of immigrants, grandchildren of immigrants. But in time, they will have been given invites to the new club, and their racism will be no less than their white counterparts. Two stories came out this week. A Republican candidate for Missouri Secretary of State came out and said, Black Americans who do not like our country should just get out. Valentina Gomez. And this was in response to the Juneteenth holiday. She found it offensive. Gomez posted on X, formerly Twitter, saying, if you don't like America, get the bleep out. Now, I read the whole story looking for what angered her about who didn't like America. There's nothing that says anybody said they didn't like America. The issue for Miss Gomez was that in her assembly, there was talk about reparations. And she said, reparations from slavery and Black victimization is about to be shoved down our throats for the most wretched holiday in America. It is outrageous to see people ask for reparations even though they never went through slavery. These ungrateful people should be celebrating because they were born in the greatest nation to ever exist. Here's a tip, she wrote. If you don't like America, get the F out. So if you think that Black folk should receive reparations, you hate America and you should get out, says Ms. Gomez. The video ends with a photo of Miss Gomez posting with an assault rifle while dressed in military-style clothing. Gomez is the 25-year-old immigrant from Colombia and has never served in the military. In an additional statement to Newsweek, Gomez stood by her inflammatory tweet, repeating her view on reparations and saying, this is her comment concerning reparations: if you don't like America, GTFO. She was quoted earlier as saying, in America, you can be anything you want, so don't be weak and gay. Same situation in California. Assemblywoman Kate Sanchez, Republican from Santa Margarita, said during the hearing, I am concerned about the proposal to help facilitate distribution of reparations. Sanchez cited economists who analyzed the proposal from California's Reparation Task Force and found California Assemblywoman said it would be unfair to make, that's what they said, to make Asian and Latino Californians pay slavery reparations to African Americans. The pain of the past should not be paid by the people of today. So I guess she's saying the pain of the past should be paid by the people of the past. But those people are dead. So we tie the pain of the past to the recipients of the benefits of the past. And we're not asking individuals per se, indirectly we are, but we're asking America to fix this problem. That can't be Sheila. That's got to be weird. Perhaps she should read about the Zoot Suit riot. She may have a different take or perspective. I mean, this is just part of a wider narrative that's taking over. She says, I understand that it's hard to ask those of us currently sitting in the legislature to make those commitments. This is the response by an Indian on the legislature. But no one asked Black families over generations if it was okay to take their wealth, if it was okay to enslave them, or if it was okay, and he paused as he became emotional, if it was okay to put their children in generations of poverty. The country became a superpower based on free labor of African descendants over hundreds of years. We need to recognize it. It's not supposed to be easy to actually admit when you cause pain. See, there are it's almost I knew it was Greg. I know his work. It's almost as if to say that the pain of slavery and Jim Crow laws and systemic racism and the Trump presidency only affected the people in the time in those. No, these things were generational. Right? They didn't happen in a vacuum. Many of the systems put in place to perpetuate those crimes are still in effect today. The descendants of those individuals are still feeling the effects. The people who grew up and saw what happened to Buffalo and Tulsa and Ocoee, all those people who grew up being afraid to tell their children to make something of yourself because the prevailing sentiment was that if you did too well, white folk would kill you. So you had to hide that you knew how to read and hide the fact that you're smart. These are real things. You know, my kids get on me because I can't let the story go because I felt so terrible because I let people bring me down to their level. But, you know, I told the story 10 times, but I was young. I was young. I'm in Boston and I'm doing an audit, and I had a group of auditors working with me, and I sent them in advance, as they normally do, to go in to meet their counterparts that's going to be giving them information and they're going to be talking to. And then I come in a few minutes later and I introduce myself, give them the scope of the audit, let them know who I am. So my colleagues came in, they're talking to them. I came in later, and the minute I walked in, two people looked at their watch as if to say, typical. I ignored it. I introduced myself. Good morning, I'm Mr. Miller. You've met my colleagues. I will be the lead auditor on this job, and I will be the one that will be evaluating all their work and writing the final report at the end of our time here together. And should there be an extension of the time because of irregularities that we found, then I will be making the decision as to whether we need to expand the scope of our audit. Well, I mean, this is what starts happening. So don't tell me that it's past. I still have to live with this. Nobody gave me that job. Nobody brought me up to the level to make me an in charge or a lead accountant as it was at the time. I earned my way there. It was a hard road. But people are still conditioned to think differently. In fact, that job, when I left there, I remember to tell you the story. When I left there, is because one guy that I was training came to me to complain that he was working so many hours and he's been there so long and such, and it doesn't make sense that he hasn't had a raise and he should be making more money than he's making. And of course, in the corporate environment, you're not to talk about salary, but in that environment, he happened to mention how much he was being paid. Now, keep in mind, he's working for me. I evaluate his work. I do his evaluation every 6 months. I sign off on all his work. I sign his timesheets. I've taught him everything he needs to know about audit. And in his complaint, he happens to mention that he needs to make more money than, and he named the number. You know where this is going. Yes, the number was more than mine. And when I went in to see two of the partners about it, they attempted to deflect and made the issue about the discussion of salary in the workplace, to which I said, sue me, but this is wrong. We still have to live with it, is my point. Nothing's really changed. So when we talk about reparations, we still have to live in substandard housing and drink substandard water. And we still have to, you know, and don't tell me the three people you know who made it out okay, right? We're not talking about individual. We're talking about systems. Don't be ignorant. We're talking about systems. When we talk about racism, we're not talking about or saying that every Black person in America experiences racism every day. We're not saying that. We're not saying that every cop out there is terrible and wants to shoot and kill Black people. We're not saying that. We're talking about systems. And we have to live with this, and we have to live through this. You send us to college unprepared. You put us in substandard schools that we excel in those schools only to get to the broader community in college and find out we're not prepared. And then we end up on the 5.5 or the 6-year plan because most of what we learned in high school wasn't up to par. And you can't sit here and tell me it's not intentional. Or maybe it's not intentional, or it's just completely dismissive that you don't care. I came to America and put in a math class as a junior. And they had to move me in the middle of the year because the stuff they were teaching me, I saw in either 7th or 8th grade. So we're not making this up. And now we have to sit here, and as the Asian community and the Latino community are increasing in numbers, we have to sit here and watch as white folk, white America, systemically again, make the decision that we will do all we can to put you ahead of African Americans, and you are so willing to accept it. And I'm deliberately saying African Americans are not, and not black people, because many racist white people will still elevate Africans and even some Caribbeans above African Americans. And nobody wants to talk about that part of the equation. But the target is really African Americans. There is something woven into the fabric of America. Felice, under fire or under ash or under a highway. After it was burned down, just put 8 lanes through it and act like it was never there. You know, there is something that racist white America, deep in their DNA, have against their own black people. And that's why I wasn't using the term black people, because you can be black and be from any place else and will still be treated better in many cases than African Americans. Granted, let me just say this. Some of us, need to take some responsibility for some of that, right? But that's a discussion that we need to have in the black community. That's not a statement that white folk need to get to make. We will address our issues. We will talk to our own people about their own issues. We do have to take some responsibility for some of it. I was talking to somebody just today. This new thing, and it's more pervasive with our women than our men, this new thing of leaving the house half naked, of being on the internet half naked all the time. You go on a TV show and you got to show the body work that you have. No, we have issues. We have this idea of just always looking extra provocative, I think is trashy, but who's asking me? But we have issues like the situation in North Jersey where a high school yearbook is pictures of our daughters twerking. And somebody wanted that to be the cover. So I'm not saying we don't have issues. We do. But that's in-house. That's in-house. And we need to deal with that. And if y'all want to have that conversation, we can have that conversation. Some of it is on us. We're highlighting the wrong stuff. We're celebrating the stuff that costs, not the stuff that pays. We're all consumers. We have issues. I'm not sitting here being naive to think all of it is on somebody else. No, we have house cleaning that we ought to do. But we still got to deal with that situation out there, because America has done that since the beginning of time, and it continues to do it. I have 15 minutes and I have 2 subjects I want to deal with very quickly. I'll deal with one in turn. I know this is Men's Health Month, and excuse me, I didn't have Donna says big girls get half naked because Lizzo, I'm not sure who Lizzo is. Lizzo does it, and that makes it okay. I see it all the time. I see it everywhere I go. I see it on TV. I see it. Yeah, we have some issues that we have to deal with, right? And we have to take responsibility. This idea I will never be a part of any community that, even though legitimately have a gripe outside the community, but I'm never going to be a part of any community that at the same time is not willing to take personal responsibility for its contribution in its own situation. But that's a conversation for another day. I didn't deal a lot with Men's Health Month for all kind of reasons. I didn't have the bandwidth to deal with it. I don't think the culture is just waking up to it. And I'm not sure if I'm the best qualified person to deal with it. But I've been on a theme with healthcare, particularly as it relates to Black women. And so I went scouring the world trying to find some advice and some counsel on my own without having to bring in the professionals. And at some point in time, we may. But I want you to just watch this little clip. It blessed me, and it was good information. And you can tell me if you find any value in it. Let's just watch this clip.
How you can advocate for yourself if your doctor doesn't take your concerns seriously. I'm a fourth-year medical student, and one of the first things we learned in medical school is how to put together a differential diagnosis. It basically means, tell me all the other things that it could be. For example, maybe you have a headache, or you're feeling lightheaded, or have chest pain, abdominal pain, or you just feel really sad, and you bring this up to your doctor or clinician, and they just blow it off. Oh, it's probably nothing. I want you to ask them, what is your differential diagnosis for this chest pain, for this abdominal pain, for my lightheadedness? This is where you catch them off guard because they weren't expecting you to know that word. So then they'll have to list it out. Well, your chest pain, it could be nothing, or it could be a myocardial infarction. It could be a pulmonary embolism. It could be an aortic dissection. It could be blah, 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 blah. So next you ask them, how have you ruled those other ones out? Now they gotta explain things to you. Even better, ask them, what's the evidence for and against that differential?
Well, I guess it could be a heart attack because, you're having the chest pain, the pressure, it's worse. The shortness of breath is worse with activity. And, the classic signs. How have I ruled that out? That's a good question. Maybe I should get that EKG.
A differential diagnosis. What else could it be? And how did you rule it out? Oh, I think it's heartburn. Okay. What else could it be? And how have you ruled those out? You got to ask the questions. You have to know the right questions. If I were you right now, I would be writing that in my notes someplace. Ask for a differential diagnosis, A, B. How have you ruled those out? Men, it's the same thing. You go to pee and it's delayed. The stream is weak. What could it be? How have you ruled that out? Not big, but it's a start. And it gets you on your way to being an advocate for yourself. Watch out for the signs of trivializing something you think might be something. All right? Tell me why it's not anything. Lastly, before we leave tonight, just want to turn the page quickly. To watch this video. It's a couple minutes. And I want to share my heart on the other side of it. Not just to share my heart, but possibly to provide an additional perspective as how to process these cultural issues as we're dealing with them in our day. Watch this video.
Critics of a new law say that in Louisiana schools, the line between church and state is getting blurred. The Republican governor just signed a law making Louisiana the first state in the country to require the 10 Commandments be posted in every public school classroom, from kindergarten through state-funded universities. The law specifies the commandments must be displayed on a poster or framed document that's at least 11 by 14 inches and in, quote, large, easily readable font. Opponents have now vowed to sue, and at least one high school teacher is saying he will defy that law, calling it nonsense.
It's just foolish legislation. I mean, what's going to happen? A third grader is going to walk in a classroom and see "Thou shalt not commit adultery" on the wall and say, well, you know, I was really planning on committing adultery today, but since I read that on the wall, now I'm not going to do it. It's just nonsense. We have real issues. And
joining me now to discuss is one of the co-authors of House Bill 71, Louisiana State Representative Lauren Ventrella. State Representative, thank you so much for being with us to share your perspective. Does the bill specify what kind of penalty teachers like that will face?
There's not any penalty under the law. It's just a requirement that the classrooms should post what we know and believe is the moral fabric, the moral fiber of our country that should be on public display, that the school children should have the opportunity to read and be exposed to.
So when you talk about the moral fiber of our country, you realize that this country is an amalgamation of cultures, right, and different faiths. And even within Christianity, people don't interpret those commandments the same way.
Well, what's important about this bill and what's important to remember about this country is that whether we like it or not, Moses is in the Supreme Court of the United States. The 10 Commandments are in the Supreme Court of the United States. Moses is on the law in Congress. This is part and ingrained in our nation. This is a historical document that's important in Louisiana because in Louisiana, we believe in faith, family, and freedom. And that is why I have voted in favor of this bill.
Sure, but you also recognize that the Constitution of this country, its founding document, doesn't include the word God or Jesus or Christianity, and that's for a reason, because the founding fathers founded this country as a secular one. You don't
Boris,
see that?
I bet you CNN pays you a lot of money, and I bet you got a bunch of dollar bills.
What does this have to do with the network that I work for or what I'm getting paid? Don't make this about that. Answer the question. Why did the founding fathers not include God in the Constitution if they wanted this country to be the way that you see it?
Let me finish my statement. And
answer the question and don't make this about me.
In God we trust. Well, make it about me. I got a dollar bill in my wallet. In God we trust is written on that dollar. It is not forcing anybody to believe one viewpoint. It's merely posting a historical reference on the wall for students to read and interpret it if they choose.
But fundamentally, you understand that there's a separation between church and state, and that if you're a student at a school, say you're Muslim or Hindu or atheist, having that on the wall, doesn't that endorse a specific set of beliefs?
Absolutely not. It is a historical document. Again,
but there are historical documents. There are historical documents that actually this law authorizes to be displayed in classrooms, like the Mayflower Compact, the Declaration of Independence, and others. But this one is specifically religious, and there's a difference there. I mean, that seems pretty clear that there's a difference between a random historical document and one that endorses a very specific view of a very specific denomination within a religion.
I don't agree with you that this is a random historical document. This is a
I didn't say it was random, but there are others. Go ahead.
This is a very valuable document. Look, this nation has gotten out of hand with crime, with the bad negative things that are going on. Why is it so preposterous that we would want our students to have the option to have some good principles instilled in them. If they don't hear it at home, let them read it in the classroom. It's no different than the Mayflower Compact, which is mentioned in the document as well. I don't understand why this is so preposterous and that litigation is being threatened. It doesn't scare us in the state of Louisiana. We say bring it on.
Because if someone has a home in which they choose to believe something different, which is welcome in this country, it's literally why people fled to come here to found this country to begin with, then they should be allowed to. And it's not really an option if you're requiring it to be put up in the wall of the classroom. What do you say to the parents of students or even teachers who don't share your religious views?
Don't look at it.
What would you say if your child had to go to a classroom in which the 5 pillars of Islam were required to be on the wall? How would you feel?
Again, this is not about the 5 pillars of Islam. This bill specifically states the 10 Commandments. It is a historical document.
I'm presenting you with a hypothetical that would help you put yourself in the shoes of someone you may not understand and their point of view. How would you feel if you walked into a classroom and something you didn't believe in was required to be on the wall? You can answer that question.
I appreciate you, Chris. I cannot sit here and gather and fathom what you could give me 1,000 hypotheticals. But again, this specific bill applies to this specific text. The Quran or Islam, that is a very broad statement. We're specifically talking about a limited text on, mind you, a piece of paper that's not much bigger than a legal sheet of paper. Some kids might even need a magnifying glass to read all of this. This is not so preposterous that we're somehow sanctioning and forcing religion down people's throat. I've heard the comments, and it's just ridiculous.
I mean, a requirement is a requirement, right? Your law mandates a specific version of the commandments be posted. Here is one of them. I want to share it with our viewers. It says, quote, "Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his cattle, nor anything that is thy neighbor's." I'm wondering why this specific version of the commandments was selected.
So the reason why for that is because it is the most historical reference. It is one of the original translations into the English language, and to preserve the actual history of the document, the drafters of the legislation felt that it was very important to maintain that historical context and that language that portrays it in the best historical light possible.
I'm in no way diminishing anyone's beliefs. I don't think that my personal beliefs are important to this story, but I do have to point out and ask you about the fact that religious scholars don't even agree who wrote the 10 Commandments, where or when they were written. Does that not give you pause in any way that this comes from a religious document and not from something that's based in secular agreement or in a doctrine that a group of people have come to accept, something like the Constitution?
Look, religious scholars may not agree, but I'm going to tell you right now, Louisiana in both houses agreed, and we passed this legislation. Look, Louisiana is not California or New York. It may make people uncomfortable in other states, but in this legislature this year, it was a resounding acceptance of this legislation, and that's what's most important.
What should a teacher tell a kindergartner who asks what adultery is?
Well, the teacher should be able to have an appropriate response, which is to tell them, look, guys, this is a historical document that's posted on the wall to remind everyone of good morals, good principles. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not lie. These are important things. I think that in the state of Louisiana, we have echoed a strong voice that we believe that faith is a very important part of history and the founding of this nation. Again, we've got it posted in historical buildings all over the place. I don't understand why this is such a shock factor to the nation that we would somehow do this. I'm proud that in the state of Louisiana, we're leading the charge on this, and I am proud to press the button in favor of that bill.
I guess the argument is that you could teach morals without getting into religion. I have one last question. State Representative, will you come back when this gets taken up at the Supreme Court?
I'd be more than happy to have this conversation with you again, Boris. Maybe I'll get some of those dollar bills in my pocket one day like you on CNN so I can remind myself of God.
I wish you would have made it personal, because it's not. It's about the story. It's not about me, and it's not about the amount of money in my wallet. State Representative Lauren Ventrola, I
No.
very much appreciate your time. Thanks for being with us.
I hope that you found that as equally nauseating as I did. There have been so much that's been going on this week, and I've been making some comments that's driving some issue. Trifani, oh, thank you. Let's see if we can make some sense of this. The Ten Commandments is part of or Christianity is part of the moral fiber of our country. How many would agree that that's debatable? Sure, it played a role. Moral fiber? Not sure. She kept making the point about this is a historical document, and this is a part of history, and so forth and so on. And we're talking about the same people that's pushing this as a historical document, and we don't even want to talk about the idea of Moses being credited as the author of the Ten Commandments, which is just a whole nother level, Sunday school level of theological ignorance. But how is it now that when it comes to things that they want, teaching history is important? I wasn't aware that these southern states were interested in teaching history. In fact, most of them have laws on the book that's been signed in recent years to make sure certain pieces of history aren't taught, especially those that somehow speak to white fragility. Posting a historical reference on the wall for all to see. So why isn't all of history important? If they don't hear it at home, let them hear it in the classroom. Keep in mind again, this is the parents' rights group. This is the same group of people that are saying schools shouldn't be teaching, everything that's related to minorities is now woke, right? They shouldn't be grooming and indoctrinating our kids. They should be teaching math. Parents need to, and parents should have these rights. But now that they've decided that this is what they want, if they're not hearing it at school, if they're not hearing it at home, rather, then the school or the state should take over. Same people. If you don't believe it, the response is don't look at it. How Christian, right? In other words, if I have to pass something every day that I find offensive, don't look at it. When you walk into the room, you know it's there, so just keep your head to the other. I don't even know why I would want a teacher explaining to my first grader the concept of adultery. This representative's attitude, did anybody notice that but me? I think Dee might have mentioned it. Was there anything Christ-like about her response? Was she defending Christ, or was she defending Louisiana and the Southern way of life? Let me say this. On the heels of this whole issue was a situation this week where a church displayed a pride flag outside. And yes, the pastor wasn't overly eloquent, and the people speaking to him intellectually handed him his lunch. I get all of that. It was terrible. I felt sorry for him. Pastor, are you saying you think we should put it's okay to put a pride flag up at a church? No, I'm not saying that. But this is what's going to bug some of y'all. I have come not to believe that an American flag should be in a church. I think it should just be the cross. Because I think that old polluted ephod we've been talking about, with all of America's sins and crimes, for it to be a symbol in our place of worship, I think we might want to rethink that proposition. Donna, she mentioned the whole idea about in God we trust. You know, that's even something we need to think about. I think the idea of in God we trust is a great idea for a democratic society because everybody can read that and hear what they want to hear. So a Muslim wouldn't have to be offended, or a Jew wouldn't have to be offended. I don't even know where this is coming from either, but because if we want to put up something that's going to really espouse Christian virtues, I'm not sure if we should really just go and get a document that was really from the Torah. It was really theirs first, but that's another subject for another day also. How about the Beatitudes? You know, I think there's some New Testament stuff if we're just trying to be Christian. I think we need to get back to just Jesus. Just him. That version of thou shalt not covet. We better be careful. We better be careful. Bishop, what are you saying? And I'm just going to put it out there. I don't think any of this has anything to do with Jesus. I think this is Christianized Southern philosophy. I think this is the mindset of people who refuse to believe that the North won. Her very spirit, her very attitude says that Christ was. There's no grace in it. There's no love in it. This isn't New York. Listen what she said. I want you to pay attention. This is in New York or California. And the kinds of dumb I wanted to call her. So, sweetheart, you don't think there's saints in New York and California? You don't think there are Christians there? Based on those two states, there are probably more, no, not probably, I guarantee you there are more Christians in New York and California individually than there would be in Louisiana. But this not about standing with your Christian brothers and sisters. This is about standing with your religious confederacy. That's what this is. This is Christianized confederacy. And I wish more men and women of God would start calling it out for what it is. I don't have a problem with the 10 Commandments being on the wall. I'm not sure what is the point of mandating it if there is no teeth to the law and there is no penalty for not doing it. So it could be much to do about nothing. It could be for clicks and votes. It could be for all kinds of reasons, right? But why? That's the question. But why? Who is going to provide the context? Who is going to provide the New Testament question that Jesus had to answer as to who is my neighbor? Since we are so committed to history, is there room for a conversation as to how America in general and the South in particular has trampled over the 10 Commandments and all the other laws of God as it relates to their Black and brown neighbors? If we're going to have a conversation about the law of God, if we're going to have a conversation about the 10 Commandments, if we're going to be committed to history, there's a lot of context. Are we going to say, let's put these documents up and let's also have a conversation how for at minimum 400 years of our history, we didn't care anything about what it said? I bet you nobody want to have that conversation. Gee, you're right. This is antebellum antics. It's got nothing to do with Jesus. Stay focused out there, y'all. This is getting crazy by the second. And too many Christians that I know, even leaders in the Lord's church, are buying into these nonsenses and thinking that they're somehow standing up for right and standing up for the Lord Jesus Christ. And all this is truly Christianized Confederacy. No wolf walk into your house and says, "Good evening, I am a wolf," to ravage you. They come in sheep's clothing. Be careful. You have the Spirit of God. You have discernment. You saw that clip. You know, without me telling you, that that's not Christianity. Don't fall for it. It's old-fashioned Southern racism being reborn, coming up another room. Don't be silly, y'all. Y'all are smart people. I trust you. Keep praying. He'll answer prayer. God bless you. Good night.